These stories for those people who are troubled by struggles in their life and stop fighting. Watch till the end, you will find how to be successful in your life. The first story. Once upon a time, there lived a woman in a town. Every morning, the woman baked bread for her family members and an extra one for a hungry passerby. She would always place the extra bread on the windowsill, so that whoever needs it can take it. She noticed that a beggar came every day and took the extra bread. Instead of expressing gratitude, he would mutter some words as he went on his way. And those words were, "The evil you do remains with you, the good you do comes back to you." This went on day after day. And so on. The woman felt very irritated. Not even a word of gratitude, she said to herself. Every day, this beggar utters this jingle, what does it mean? One day, exasperated, she decided to do away with him. I shall get rid of this beggar, she said to herself. She added poison to the bread that she prepared for him. As she was about to place it on the windowsill, her hands trembled. What is this I am doing? She said to herself. And immediately, she threw this bread into the fire and prepared another one and put it on the sill. As usual, the beggar came, picked up the bread and muttered the words, "The evil you do remains with you, the good you do comes back to you." The beggar proceeded on his way blissfully, unaware of the war raging in the mind of the woman. The woman thought that he did not thank her and went away saying the same words again. It would have been better if I had given him poisoned bread. Anyways, every day, as the woman placed the bread on the windowsill, she offered a prayer for her son who had gone missing 2 years ago. She tried a lot to find her missing son, but to no use. She always prayed for his safe return. That evening, there was a knock on the door. As she opened the door, she was surprised to find her son standing in the doorway. He had grown thin and lean. His garments were tattered and torn. He was hungry, starved and weak. She started crying with joy and hugged her son immediately. Looking at his mother, her son said, "Mother, it is a miracle that I am here. While I was miles away, I was so hungry that I collapsed there. I would have died, but just then an old beggar passed by. I begged him for some bread, and he was kind enough to give me a whole loaf of bread." The woman asked in curiosity, "Who was that man? Can you tell me? I want to thank him." The son said, "Mother, he did not tell anything about him. He just muttered a few words and went on his way. And those words were, 'The evil you do remains with you, the good you do comes back to you.'" As the mother heard those words, she was stunned. She leaned against the door for support. Now she knew who that man was. She remembered the poisoned bread that she had made that morning. And had she not burnt that bread in the fire, it would have been eaten by her own son. And he would have lost his life. She realized the significance of the words, "The evil you do remains with you. The good you do comes back to you." If we see in our lives, then we will find that this principle of karma is applicable to all. If we do bad deeds, bad will happen to us. And if we do good deeds, good will happen to us. If you dig a pit for someone, you will yourself fall in that pit. And if you do good to others, good will come back to you. Do good and don't ever stop doing good, even if it is not appreciated at that time. If you want to live a happy life, then you start giving happiness to others. Because what we give to others comes back to us. That's why it is said that, the evil you do, remains with you. The good you do, comes back to you. The second story. Once, there was a king, and he had 4 wild horses. The horses were of a very good breed, but they were wild. The king was looking for somebody to train them. He called many trainers, but no one could train them. The horses would not allow anyone to sit on their backs. If someone tried to sit on their back, they would jump and drop him down. Many people tried, but no one could succeed in sitting on the back of those horses. One day, the young man came to the king's court, and told the king that he can train his 4 horses. King warned him and said, "Before you many trainers came, and got injured and some got seriously fractured." But the man had full faith in himself, and asked the king to permit him to train his horses. At last, the king allowed the young man to try his luck. But the young man put a condition that he will live with all the 4 horses and take care of them. The king agreed and gave him permission to take care of his horses. Several months passed. One day, the king came to see his horses in the yard. He saw that the man was riding 1 horse, and all the 3 horses were running behind him. He was surprised, but also very happy to see this, because where everyone failed, this young man has succeeded in training horses. He asked a young man, "How did you train the horses?" The young man said, "My lord, the horses were really wild. Therefore, first I tried to get acquainted with these horses. For this, I left the horses in the ground freely. And then I started to imitate the horses. When they ran, I also used to run. When they would sit, I would also sit. When they would sleep, would also sleep. And when they would eat, I would also eat. This way, I started to imitate them whatever they would do." After a few days, horses started thinking that he is also a horse like us. Eventually, one day, I put a seat belt on its body. At first, the horse refused to wear a seat belt, but after a few attempts of a few days, they got used to it. After that, I sat on their back for a few days. And after a few days, I started riding them. Like this, I trained all 4 horses in a few months. Then he rode all 4 horses one by one in front of the king. Seeing this, the king became very happy, and gave many prizes to this young man, and also made him permanent trainer of all of his horses. If we see in our lives, we will find that we all also have these 4 untrained horses inside our mind. Their names are anxiety, anger, jealousy, and greed. And your intellect is a trainer. You must train these 4 horses with your intellect. So, these 4 can remain in your control. But for that, first you have to be friends with these 4s. You have to understand these 4 horses well, then you can control them. First of all, we will discuss our worries. We all know that worry is not a solution to any problem, but it will only complicate the problem. We can control worry only with our positive thoughts. Try to find a solution for your worry. And always remember that like day comes after night, similarly good time will come after hard time. Just wait patiently for the bad time to pass. Number 2 horse is our anger. Buddha always used to say that anger is such a fire in which the one who is angry burns first, and then burns the other. Anger may not harm anyone else, but the one who gets angry definitely suffers. Therefore, whenever you get angry, just think about the bad outcomes of anger, and try to calm your mind by watching your breath. By practicing slowly and slowly, in this way you can control your anger. Number 3 horse is jealousy. Jealousy arises when you consider someone else better than you. Whenever jealousy arises within you, always remember that comparison is a very foolish attitude, because each person is unique and incomparable. Once this understanding settles in you, jealousy will disappear. Number 4 horse is greed. Human greed never ends. No matter how much we may get, but we always wish to get more and more. Many times, in the desire to get more, a person is deprived of what he has. If you wish to earn money by doing hard work, and by legal means, then it is good. But if you wish to earn a lot of money by illegal means, and by shortcuts, then this is greed. Therefore, always keep control on the horse of greed in your mind, and try to be content and enjoy whatever you have. If you can do this, you can also control these 4 horses of your mind with the rein of your intellect. The third story. Once upon a time, in ancient China, there lived a monk who was known for his ability to solve difficult problems. One day, he had 2 visitors who needed his advice. Both were polite young men, and each insisted that the other should go first. After some discussion, they discovered that their questions were essentially the same, so they settled on speaking with the sage at the same time. One of the young men asked the monk, "Master, our problems are similar. We are both low-level employees being treated badly at work. We get no respect at all, and our employers constantly push us around. Can you please tell us if we should quit our jobs or not?" The monk closed his eyes and meditated at length. The 2 young men waited patiently, until finally the monk opened his eyes. He gave them the answer in 5 words: "Only a bowl of rice." The 2 young men thanked the monk and departed. They contemplated the answer as they walked back to the city. After a while, one of them broke the silence and said, "That was interesting. What do you think? What did the sage mean?" The other one was thoughtful. He said, "Well, it is fairly obvious that the bowl of rice represents our daily meals." "I agree," said the first young man. "I think he was telling us that the job is nothing more than a means to make a living. Yes, when you come right down to it, that's all we get out of the job, just our daily meals." And they went their separate ways. One of them continued working at the same place, and the other one submitted a letter of resignation immediately upon his return. He went on to the countryside and took up farming. After several years, this young man achieved considerable success as a farmer. He used what he had learned in the city to import high-quality seeds. The fruits and vegetables he grew became known as the best in the region. He enjoyed not only great profits but also a reputation as an expert. The young man who remained at work also did well. It was as if he became a different person. He took on difficult tasks and demonstrated an ability to handle adversity. He rose up through the ranks and received one promotion after another, until he became a manager. One day, the 2 of them met again by chance. Once, they got caught up with each other. They realized that they had taken two very different paths, based on the exact same answer from the monk. They were both wealthy and happy, but which path was the correct one? They were not able to understand. "How strange," the manager said. "The master said the same thing to us and we both heard it the same way. Then why did you quit your job?" The farmer was also puzzled. He said, "Is that not obvious?" I understood his words immediately. The job was nothing more than the means to get my daily meals. So why force myself to stay in a horrible situation just for a bowl of rice? Quitting was obviously the right thing to do. But why did you stay there? The manager said, "I also think it should be obvious. The job meant nothing more than a bowl of rice. So why was I getting so worked up over it?" As soon as I understood this, I realized that there was no need for me to get so upset. I did not have to take the abuse heaped on me personally, so of course, I stayed there. Is not that what he meant? The farmer shook his head and said, "Now I am completely confused. Did he mean for us to take your path or my path? Let us go and see him again and get to the bottom of this." So once again, they presented themselves before the monk and explained the reason for their visit. One of them said, "Master, as you can see, we would really like to know the real meaning of your advice some years ago. Can you give us some insight?" Again, the monk closed his eyes. The two men waited patiently as before. After some time, the monk opened his eyes and gave them his answer, and again in 5 words. And those 5 words were only a difference of thought. If we see in our lives, we will find that, like those two men, we all have different paths to follow. Every person has the ability to do something special in a particular field. All you need to do is to discover your passion and just follow it. That monk said the same words to both of them. And both of them interpreted the words of the monk differently. But both of them achieved the same result, which was success, wealth and happiness. Because both the men followed the point of the monk according to their interest. And both got success in their field. Similarly, if you also want to achieve success in your life, do not follow someone else's passion. Rather, follow your own passion and do what you enjoy doing. And unless you follow your passion, you will not get success, wealth and happiness. The 4th story. Once upon a time, a man was very much interested in self-knowledge, in self-realization. His whole search had been to find a master, who could teach him meditation. He went from one master to another, but nothing was happening. Years went by, he was exhausted. Then someone told him, "If you really want to find a master, you will have to go to the Himalayas. There is a monk who lives in some unknown part of the Himalayas, you will have to search for him. Nobody knows where exactly he lives. Because whenever somebody comes to know of him, he moves from that place, and goes even deeper into the Himalayan range." The man was getting old, but he gathered courage. For 2 years, he had to work to earn money for the journey, and then he made the journey. He had to ride on camels and horses, and then go on foot, and then he reached the Himalayas. People said, "Yes, we have heard about the old monk, he is very ancient, one cannot say how old he is, maybe 300 years, or even 500 years. Nobody knows. He lives somewhere, but the location cannot be given to you. Nobody is aware of where exactly you will find him, but he is there. If you search hard, you are bound to find him. The man searched and searched. For 2 years, he was roaming in the Himalayas. He was tired and exhausted, and living only on the wild fruits. He had lost much weight. But he was determined that he had to find this monk, even if it takes his life, it would be worth it. And one day, when he was roaming on a mountain, he saw a small hut made of grass. He was so tired that he was not even able to walk more, so he crawled. He reached the hut. There was no door. He looked in, there was nobody inside. And not only was there nobody inside, but there was every sign that for years, there had been nobody inside. He was very disappointed to see this. He fell on the ground. Out of sheer tiredness, he gave up the desire to meet the monk, and he gave up the desire to experience meditation. He was lying under the sun in the cool breeze of the Himalayas, and for the first time, he started feeling so blissful, he had never felt such bliss. Suddenly, he started feeling full of light. All thoughts disappeared. He was transformed, and for no reason at all, because he had not done anything. And then, he became aware that somebody was leaning over him. He opened his eyes, and a very ancient monk was there. The old monk was smiling, and said, "So you have come. Do you have something to ask me?" And the man said, "No." The old monk laughed, a great belly laugh which was echoed by the valleys. And he said, "So now you know what meditation is?" The man said, "Yes, now I know what meditation is." This story makes us think about what happened so that the man suddenly experienced meditation. And if we observe, we will find that the assertion, which came from his deepest core of being, "I give up the desire to experience meditation." In that giving up of desire, all efforts and endeavors disappeared. At that very moment, he was no longer the same person. And bliss showered on him. He was silent, he was a nobody, and he touched the ultimate stratum of non-being. Then he knew what meditation is. Similarly, when we try to meditate, we are not able to meditate. Because meditation is not done but it happens. When your mind becomes desireless, and your thought subsides, then meditation spontaneously starts to happen. And you start feeling blissful. In fact, meditation is a non-goal-oriented state of mind. But it also does not mean that we should not try to practice meditation. When we sit in a solitude place with our eyes closed, then we create an environment that is conducive for the phenomena of meditation to happen. Therefore, you have to keep trying continuously, till meditation happens in your life. The fifth story. A long time ago, a war broke out between two kingdoms. The large kingdom was very powerful, while the small kingdom was very weak. The small kingdom was sure of its defeat, because the number of its soldiers were very less. The army of the large state was about 10 times larger than that of the smaller state. The generals of the small kingdom refused to go to war, because they were certain about their defeat. They were thinking that with such a small army, it would be foolish to fight with such a large army. Therefore, it is better that we accept defeat without fighting, and accept all the demands of the neighboring state. Even the king could not put much pressure on his generals and soldiers. But the king was very brave. He did not want to give up without fighting. When the generals and soldiers were reluctant to go to war, the king went to a monk, living in a village in his kingdom. The monk was very famous in that state, and everyone respected him very much. The king told his concern to the monk. The monk listened to the king carefully and said, "Your Majesty, you make me the commander of your army." The king was surprised to hear the words of the monk and said, "Sir, you are a monk and you have no experience of war." The monk smiled and said, "You do as I tell you." The king had great faith in the monk, so he made him commander of his army. When the army came to know that they were going to fight, under the leadership of a man, who had no experience in war, and who does not know how to even hold the sword properly, they were even more afraid. But the monk was very enthusiastic. The king also had full faith in the monk. The army had no choice but to go to war with the monk. Anyways, they all left for the war armed with all their weapons. On the way, there was a small temple. The monk stopped outside the temple and told his army that, before leaving, let us take the blessings of the Almighty, and also ask him, what is his wish, whether we will win this battle or we will lose. If the Almighty gave us hints that we will lose the war, then we will go back. But if there is a sign of victory from God, then we will proceed with the war. Although all the soldiers were very scared, they all gathered outside the temple. The monk worshipped for some time, then he took out a coin from his pocket and shouted in front of the soldiers. He said, "I will toss this coin up. If it falls upside down, it means we will lose the war, and then we will return. But if it falls straight, it means our victory is certain, and then we will go out for war without any fear." All the soldiers were looking at the monk with great curiosity. The monk tossed the coin up in the air. The coin fell on the ground and it fell straight. The monk shouted with joy and said, "Leave all the worries, eliminate all the fear. Our victory is certain. Now, no one can defeat us. Because, Almighty has given us hints of our victory." The whole army was filled with full enthusiasm. Now, the hope of victory was confirmed in everyone's mind. With great enthusiasm, they went straight and clashed with the enemy. There was a fierce battle between both armies. Every soldier of the monk's army was filled with the sure hope of victory. After some time, they started to dominate the enemy's army. And finally, the monk's army won the battle. While returning, they were passing nearby that temple. The monk said, "Let us thank the Almighty before leaving." All the army gathered outside the temple and started thanking the God. They all were saying, "O God, thank you so much that you have made us win. Had you not indicated to us about our win, we would have lost." Just then, the monk shouted and said, "Before you thank God, just look at the coin that is lying in my pocket." The monk took out the coin and showed it to all. It was a fake coin which was straight from both sides. It could not fall upside down. The monk said, "Don't thank God for your victory. You have won because of your self-belief, you were sure to win. If you were not sure of your victory, you could have lost too. Therefore, the biggest reason for this victory is your firm belief that victory will be yours." If we see in our lives, we will find that, the success of all things in our lives also depends on whether we are filled with hope to achieve it or not. Self-confidence is very important for success in any work. It has been seen that sometimes people with positive thinking and even with less ability can do such things with their self-belief that people with full capability fail to do, due to their low self-belief. Therefore, the only thing we get to learn from this story is that it is not a big deal to be capable, but it is more important to have hope and have self-belief. When you give your full dedication to the work, you will definitely achieve success. There is a great power in positive thinking. It helps a person to make the right decision even in the worst situation, and suggest a way out of it. Therefore, no matter what the time you are going through, always remember that the positive thinker sees the invisible, feels intangible, and achieves the impossible. The sixth story. A long time ago, there was a country where the people would change a king every year. The person who would become the king had to agree to a contract that he would be sent to an island after his 1-year tenure as a king. One king finished his term, and it was time for him to go to the island and live there. The people dressed him up in expensive clothes and put him on an elephant, and took him around the cities to say goodbye to all the people. This was a moment of sadness for all the kings who ruled for 1 year. After saying farewell, the people took the king by boat to a remote island and left him there. On their way back, they discovered a ship that had sunk just recently. They saw a young man who survived by holding onto a floating piece of wood. As they needed a new king, they picked up the young man and took him to their country. They requested him to be a king for a year. First, he refused, but later he agreed to be a king. People told him about all the rules and regulations, and how he would be sent to an island after 1 year. The young man was very wise. After 3 days of being a king, he asked the ministers to show him the island where all the other kings were sent. They agreed and took him to the island. The island was covered with thick jungles, and sounds of animals were heard coming out of it. The king went a little bit inside to check. Soon he discovered the dead bodies of all the past kings. He understood that as soon as they were left on the island, the animals came and killed them. The king went back to the country and collected 100 strong workers. He took them to the island and instructed them to clean the jungle, and remove all the living and dead animals and cut down all the excessive trees. He would visit the island every month to see how the work was progressing. In the first month, all the animals were removed and many trees were cut down. In the second month, the whole island was cleaned out. The king told the workers to plant gardens in various parts of the island. He also took with himself some useful animals such as chickens, ducks, birds, goats and cows. In the third month, he ordered the workers to build big houses and docking stations for ships. Over the month, the island turned into a beautiful tourist place. Slowly and slowly, the ships passing from there started stopping there, and people started coming to visit there. Gradually, some people started living there, and thus a small beautiful town was settled there. After 1 year, when the time came for the king to leave his kingdom, the people dressed up the king and put him on an elephant, to take him around the country to say goodbye to others. However, the king was delighted to leave the kingdom. People asked him, all the other kings would cry at this moment, "Why are you so happy?" The clever king replied, "You will know soon. When people reached that island with the king, they were surprised to see that island. The island was transformed into a beautiful tourist place with all kinds of facilities. And people from far and wide had come to visit there even though their own kingdom was beautiful. Seeing them all surprised, the king smiled and said, "You are asking me why I am happy. I was happy for this reason. While all the other kings were lost into the luxuries of the kingdom, I always thought about the future and planned for it. I turned the deadly island into a beautiful place for me, where I can stay peacefully. All the ministers and the people of the state saw that. Where else would they find such a wise and visionary king? Then by not making our king forever? They prayed to the king to become their king forever. At first, the king did not accept it. But on their repeated request, the king agreed. And thus, he became the king of that kingdom and of that beautiful island forever. If we see in our lives, we will find that our future is in our hands. Our lives are what we choose to make them. Our future depends on what we do in the present. Because our actions today create our future. If we spend more of our day in comforts and luxuries, our future can become dark. Just like that king built his future in a year, in the same way you can also build your bright future with your efforts today. Whether you are a student, a businessman, or in a job, this rule applies to everyone. Make a goal for yourself, then determine the time frame in which you want to achieve that goal. And estimate how much work you need to do every day and every month to achieve your goal, and then work according to this plan. If you sincerely do daily work according to your plan, then one day, you will definitely achieve your goal and make your future bright. The seventh story. Once upon a time, a king organized an event in his kingdom, in which artists from all over the country were called to show their skill. In those artists, a magician also came to show his skill. But before the turn of the magician, many other magicians came and showed their magic. Now, the magician got a little confused as to what kind of magic he should show to the king. Then, he decided that he would show something different so that the king and everyone else would be surprised. When his turn came, he made the king's crown disappear with his magic. As soon as he disappeared the king's crown, all the people started laughing, but the king considered it as an insult to him. The king felt ashamed in front of the people without the crown. He got furious and ordered the magician to be arrested and sentenced to death on the seventh day. As soon as the magician's wife heard this news, she came to see her husband in jail and started weeping. But the magician was very optimistic. He consoled his wife and said, "Why are you crying? There are still 6 days left. Spend these 6 days happily because anything can happen in these 6 days." The wife felt that her husband had gone mad at the news of his death. She would come every day and every day. Magician would tell her not to panic and be happy. Eventually, the day of the death penalty came. The magician became sad and started crying. When the king asked him the reason for his crying, the magician said, "Your Majesty, I am not afraid of death because after all, one day everyone has to die. But I am crying because if I die, there will be a huge loss. I have been learning an art from last few years. I was teaching my horse to fly for the last 2 years, and in the next 1 year, my horse would have learned to fly, but now, I am going to die, and with my death, that art will also end and my horse will not be able to learn to fly. That's why I am crying." Hearing about the flying horse, the king thought, "If I have a flying horse, I will fly on the horse, no one can defeat me in war. I will become famous all over the world." The king started to be tempted. He immediately said to the magician, "I can give you 1 more year, but you will have to give that flying horse to me." The magician replied, "Sure, sir, it will be my pleasure to give that flying horse to you." The king said, "If that horse could fly, I will free you and give you a reward too. But if that horse could not fly, I will hang you to death." The magician agreed and happily returned home. There was an atmosphere of mourning in the magician's house, and everyone was thinking that, by now, the magician must have died. But everyone was surprised to see the magician alive. The magician told the whole thing to his family. They were very happy at first, but later, his wife became sad because she knew that there is no such horse which can fly, and then, after 1 year, the king will come to know this. He will hang the magician to death. But the magician explained to his wife and said that, "A year is a very long time, and we do not know what is going to happen in this 1 year. Therefore, let us not worry about the future and enjoy the moment." After 6 months, the king died suddenly, and after 3 months from the king's death, the horse died. Now, neither the king was alive nor the horse, and the magician was completely free now. There are 2 life lessons we can learn from this story. The first lesson is that every problem has its solution. Only we have to find it, no matter how big a problem it is. Do not panic, never give up, and try till the last breath. Problems will continue in life, but worrying about those problems will do nothing. The second lesson is to never worry about your future, because the future is uncertain. You never know what is going to happen in the next moment. Then why not think positively about our future and be happy, rather than thinking negatively about our future and be unhappy? Sometimes, problems get solved on their own during the course of time, and sometimes, problems get solved by our efforts. But the important thing is to be optimistic about our future and enjoy the present moment. The 8th story. Once upon a time, Lord Buddha was going from one village to another village with his disciples. There was a very deserted area on the way, and they found many pits dug at many places. Curiously, the disciples asked the Buddha, "Lord, why are these pits dug at many places? Who would have done this?" Buddha smiled and said, "These pits must have been made by someone who was passing through this road. And surely, he must have been thirsty and in search of water. He dug so many pits. And after getting frustrated because of not getting water, he kept digging pits one after the another. If he had patiently dug a pit at one place, he surely would have got water. But he would dig a bit at one place, and after finding no water, he would start digging another pit. And because of this, neither he got water, and so much of his hard work also went in vain." If we see in our lives, we will find that often unsuccessful people make this mistake in their lives. When they do not get success, they keep changing their field again and again due to lack of patience. If you want to achieve success in your life, you should always work patiently in one field and in one direction. If you do not work patiently in one field and keep changing your field again and again, you will not succeed. Then, you will also keep digging a pit one after another, like that person who was looking for water. Whether you are a student, a businessman, or you are into a job, it is very important to have your focus in one direction only. And along with focus, you must have patience to reach your destination. Because if you do not have patience, you will soon lose courage and change your direction. So, if you want to be successful in your life, then always remember these two things in your life. One is your focus should be in one direction and in one field. And second is you should have patience to reach your destination. If you have these two qualities, one day no one can stop you from becoming successful. The ninth story. Once upon a time, there was a small kingdom. And adjoining that small kingdom, there was a great empire. One day, a spy met the king of the small kingdom, and informed that the king of the adjoining kingdom was planning to attack their kingdom within a week. The king got anxious and called his ministers, and asked them for their suggestions. Everyone said that now nothing can be done, and our defeat and death is certain. Because they have a much bigger army compared to ours. Some ministers suggested that we should surrender without battle. And this way, we can save our lives. But the king was very brave. He was aware of the fact that neighboring state's army is much bigger than his army. But he did not want to surrender without a fight. He was looking for some solution to that. In the king's court, there was an old but very wise minister. He gave advice to the king and said, "Your Majesty, I think we should attack the neighboring state before they attack us. They are going to attack us within a week. And if they attack us, they will be fully prepared, and we will not be able to face their large army for a long time. But right now, their army will be busy preparing for war. And if at this point we attack them, then we can hope for some better results. And if even then we lose, at least we will die with dignity." The king liked the suggestion of the minister, and ordered his army to get prepared. He also invited the youth of the nation, who want to serve their country, and provided them with arms. Many people of the state also joined the army in this attack. And the very next day, the king and his army departed for war. There was a bridge between two kingdoms. After crossing the bridge with his army, the king ordered his army to fire and destroy the bridge. Everyone was astonished to see this. Then the king declared that, "Now we don't have any other option, but to fight for victory. Now either we can die or we can win. We don't have any other plans left with us." Hearing this from the king, the army was filled with enthusiasm. They had come to know that, now they have no other choice. They attacked the enemy's army with full force. The enemy's army was blown away by this sudden attack. A fierce battle ensued between the armies of both the states due to their strong self-confidence. The army of the small state gradually started dominating the enemy's army. And after a long and fierce battle, the small kingdom won the war. And the only reason behind their victory was they did not have Plan B. If we see in our lives, then we will find that often we fail in our life, only when we have more than one option. People have more than one plan in their life. They think that if Plan A does not work, they will go for Plan B, and if Plan B does not work, they will go for Plan C. But if you have more than one plan in your life, you will not be successful in any. Because in that case you will not give your 100% to any plan. And this will continue for the rest of your life. If you want to achieve something in your life, there should be only one plan, and only one goal in your life. Therefore, always remember that life will give you many choices, but the choice you make will determine your future. The 10th story. This story is for those people who always curse their destiny for their failure and plight in their lives. But after listening to this story, you will know that, in reality, every human being is the creator of his own destiny. This is a real-life story, and the story goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a school in the middle of a dense forest, in which many students studied. In ancient India, children used to study away from their home in school for many years. The master would treat all the children as equal and provide them the same education. One day, the master was teaching the disciples. Just then, his eyes fell on a disciple who was looking as if he did not understand anything. The master went to him and again explained to him. But the student could not understand even after explaining it many times. The master suddenly got very angry and he asked the boy to show his palm. The boy put his palm in front of his master. The master knew palmistry. Seeing the palm of the student, the master said, "Son, you go back to your home. Don't waste your time staying in school." The disciple asked, "Master, why are you saying so?" The master said, "Because you don't have a line of study in your hand." Then, the master called another disciple showing his hand, started saying, "See, this is the line of study, and this line is not in your hands. So don't waste your time and go back home. There you can do some other work and live your life." Hearing this, the child took out a knife from his pocket which he used to cut wood. With that sharp knife, he made a deep line in his hand. His whole hand started to bleed. Then, he said to his master, "See, master, I have made a line of study in my hand. Tell me, will you give me education now?" Seeing this, the master's heart moved. Tears welled up in his eyes and he embraced the disciple. He said, "Son, no power in the world can stop you from having education. Because determination and hard work can change even the lines of the hand, and eventually, the destiny of a person." And it is said that, the little boy grew up and became famous by writing the book of grammar. It would be surprising to know for you that, even after the passage of so many centuries, such an excellent and complete grammar book has not yet been made in any language of the world. Had that sage listened to the words of his master on that day, and believed in the lines of his hands, perhaps the world would have never known him. But instead of relying on his destiny, he trusted his hard work and made his name bright in the world. After listening to this story, will you still believe that the lines on your palm are responsible for your success and failure? Is our life only based on these lines? If life relied on the lines of hands, perhaps many great people of the world would not have reached the height where they are today. Because in front of determination and hard work, even misfortune gives up to its knees. Those who are determined and who are hard workers, they never rely on their destiny. Rather, they create their own destiny. Therefore, whenever you face failure in your life, do not curse your destiny, but remember that, with determination and hard work, you can create your own destiny. The final story. Once, a monk was sitting under a tree outside the village. Under that tree, there lived a mouse in a hole. The monk saw that, the rat was repeatedly trying to get out of his hole and then go inside. When this happened several times, the monk used the power of his mantras and started talking to the mouse. He asked the mouse, "Oh mouse, you are trying to get out of your hole, but due to some fear, you go back to the hole. Are you scared of me?" The mouse said, "No sir. I am not scared of you. But actually, there are some cats which live around this tree. I am scared of those cats. I am afraid if I come out of my hole, cats will kill me and eat me. That's why I am not coming out of my burrow. I have been hungry for the last many days. But due to fear of cats, I cannot come out. I wish I was also a cat. Had I been a cat, I would roam freely and would not fear cats." The monk saw that this rat was very cowardly. He said to Rat, "You see friend, one day everyone has to die. For how long will you keep dying every day of such fear? So, get out of your burrow and find your food. Be a little careful, but throw out the fear of the cat from your heart." The rat said, "Sir, those cats are very dangerous, I can't stop fearing cats. If you want to help me, then please make me a cat. Otherwise, stop advising me." Saying this, the rat started crying. The monk felt pity on him and said, "My friend, if you are happy to be a cat, then I will make you a cat." Saying this, the monk closed his eyes, muttered some mantra in his mouth. And suddenly the rat turned into a cat. As soon as the rat became a cat, he jumped up with joy, and ran away to find its food. Few days passed. One day, the monk was sitting under the same tree and meditating. He heard the sound of a cat's cry. When he opened his eyes, he saw that the same cat was sitting beside him and crying. The monk asked him the reason for his crying. The cat said, "O wise one, ever since I have become a cat, I am afraid of dogs. One day some dogs attacked me and tried to kill me. I barely saved my life." Then the cat said, "Sir, please make me a dog, so that I may live fearlessly." The monk again felt pity on the cat, and muttered some mantra in his mouth. And suddenly, the cat turned into a dog. As soon as the cat became a dog, he ran away in search of food. Few days passed like this. One day, the monk was sitting under the same tree and meditating. Just then, that dog ran to him and started crying. The monk opened his eyes and asked him, "What happened, my friend? Why are you crying?" The dog said, "Sir, I am not happy after becoming a dog. One day, I went into the jungle near the village. And suddenly, a lion attacked me, and tried to kill me. I narrowly escaped from there. Now I am always afraid of lions. Please make me a lion, so that I may roam freely in the jungle without any fear." The monk was very compassionate. He again felt pity on the dog and made him a lion with his mantra. As soon as he became a lion, he ran away from there and went into the jungle. After a few days, one day, the monk was sitting under the tree and meditating. Just then the lion came and started crying beside him. The monk opened his eyes and asked him, "What happened, my friend? Why are you crying?" The lion said, "O wise one, I am not happy after becoming a lion. One day, I was roaming freely in the jungle, Just then some people started following me and tried to imprison me in the cage. They also shoot fire on me. Now I am always afraid of humans. I always fear that someday, they will catch me and imprison me in the cage. Please make me human, so that I may not have any fear and may live happily." The monk looked at him, smiled, and then he said, "My friend, you became king of the jungle, but still you lived in fear. Whatever you become, you will still have fear. Because your fear is in your heart. I can change your body with my power, but I can't change your heart. Your heart will always be a mouse. You have to overcome this fear of yourself. Otherwise, you will spend your whole life in fear." After listening to the monk, the mouse understood that fear was inside him. Until he does not control his fear, whatever he becomes, he will continue to be afraid and be timid. Then he decided to change himself to live without fear, and he became a rat again. If we see in our lives, we will find that there are many of us who always live in some kind of fear. A student is afraid of exams. And a worker is afraid of his boss. Some people are afraid of the future, and some are afraid of death. Every person is carrying some kind of fear in his life. Those who achieve success in their life, they also feel fear at some point of time. But they don't let their fear dominate them, they face their fear, and that's why they become successful. Fear is such a disease that never lets us reach the height of success. Because due to fear, we either change our decisions, or we change ourselves. Therefore, if you want to move ahead in your life, then you have to conquer your fear. This is story from Gift of Life. Thank you for watching and keep smiling.